What if I told you the knights who fought in the Crusades almost teamed up with the most feared warriors in human history? Not against each other. Together. Against Islam. This almost happened. And if it did, the entire world would look different today. The 13th century was chaos. Jerusalem had fallen. The Crusader kingdoms were dying. And from the east, a storm of horsemen was sweeping across the planet, destroying everything in their path. These were the Mongols. And for a brief moment in history, Christian kings believed they could turn these destroyers into saviors. This is the story nobody teaches. The alliance that could have changed everything. The letters, the envoys, the promises, and the tragedy of what never came to be. Let me take you back to 1220. Europe knows almost nothing about Asia. The Crusades are focused on Jerusalem, on the Holy Land, on fighting the Muslims who control the sacred sites of Christianity. But beyond Persia, beyond the known world, something is rising that nobody in Europe can even imagine. His name is Genghis Khan, and he is building an empire that will become the largest continuous land empire in human history. The Mongols start in the steppes of Mongolia, and within decades they conquer China, Central Asia, Persia. Cities that stood for centuries disappear in weeks. Entire populations are wiped out. The Mongols do not just defeat armies. They erase civilizations. Word starts reaching Europe around 1220. Refugees from Russia bring stories. Christians fleeing from the east describe riders who move like ghosts, who kill without mercy, who seem unstoppable. Medieval chroniclers do not know what to make of this. Some think these are the armies from the Book of Revelation, Gog and Magog, the nations that will appear before the end times. Europe is terrified. Then in 1241, the terror becomes real. Mongol armies under Beta Khan invade Eastern Europe. They destroy Poland. They crush Hungary. At the Battle of Legnica, they kill Duke Henry II of Silesia. At the Battle of Mohi, they annihilate the Hungarian army. Nothing stops them. European knights in heavy armor are useless against Mongol horse archers who can shoot accurately while riding at full speed. For the first time in centuries, Europe faces an enemy it cannot defeat. But then something strange happens. In 1242, the Mongols suddenly withdraw. The great Khan Gade has died back in Mongolia, and the Mongol generals need to return for the succession. Europe is saved, but the memory remains. The world has changed. Europe now knows there is a power in the East greater than anything they have ever faced. And this is where the story gets interesting. Because some European leaders start asking a dangerous question. What if we could make them our allies? Think about it. The Crusades are failing. The Muslim armies are strong. The Crusader kingdoms in the Holy Land are shrinking every year. But now there is this massive force in the East that is also fighting Muslims. The Mongols have already destroyed the Muslim Khwarezmian Empire. They are pushing into Persia. They share a common enemy with the Crusaders. Could they work together? In 1245, Pope Innocent IV decides to find out. He sends a Franciscan friar named Giovanni da Pian del Carpine on a mission that seems impossible. Travel across the entire continent of Asia. Find the Mongol Khan. Ask for peace. Maybe even ask for alliance. This monk rides for over a year. He crosses mountains and deserts and endless steppes. Finally, he reaches Karakoram, the Mongol capital, and meets Gayuk Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. Giovanni delivers the Pope's letter. In it, the Pope urges the Mongols to stop their invasions and convert to Christianity. Gayuk's response is not what anyone expected. He writes back to the Pope basically saying, "You submit to me instead." From the Mongol perspective, they are the chosen people of heaven. They believe they have a divine mandate to rule the entire world. Everyone else should submit to them, including the Pope. This becomes the pattern. Europeans send envoys asking for cooperation and conversion. Mongols respond with demands for submission. It is a clash not just of armies but of worldviews. But European leaders do not give up. King Louis IX of France is preparing for the 7th Crusade in the late 1240s. He desperately wants Mongol support. He sends ambassadors in 1247. The Mongols express some interest but make it clear they are more focused on conquest than cooperation. In 1248, Mongol ambassadors actually visit Louis while he is in Cyprus preparing for his crusade. They tell him the Mongols are willing to help free Jerusalem from Muslim control. Louis is excited. He sends another ambassador, a friar named William of Rubruck, to continue negotiations. William spends years with the Mongols. He travels to the court of Mongol Khan. He sees things no European has ever seen. A vast empire where Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and pagans all coexist. Cities larger than anything in Europe. A level of organization and power that is almost unimaginable. But when William returns, the news is devastating. The Mongols have no interest in converting to Christianity. They took Louis's gifts as tribute, as payment from a vassal. They consider Louis a subject, not an ally. Louis is crushed. His strategy has failed. But here is the tragedy. If Louis had not insisted on conversion, if he had been willing to work with the Mongols as they were, the alliance might have actually happened. But Louis is so religiously devoted, so convinced that alliance with non-Christians is wrong, that he cannot compromise. Meanwhile, the Mongols keep conquering Muslim territory. In 1258, they do something unthinkable. They capture Baghdad, the heart of the Islamic world. They destroy the Abbasid Caliphate that has ruled Islam for centuries. For the Crusaders watching from their castles in the Holy Land, this looks like a miracle. The Mongols are doing what the Crusaders have never been able to do. Hope rises again. The Mongol Ilkhanate in Persia is now ruled by Hulagu, a grandson of Genghis Khan. His wife is a Nestorian Christian. He favors Christians in his empire, protects churches, employs Christian advisors. To the Crusaders, this seems like divine providence. European kings start sending more letters. The Ilkhans respond with promises. They talk about coordinating attacks. Mongols from the east, Crusaders from the west, trapping the Muslims between them. Jerusalem could be retaken. Islam could be crushed. For a brief moment, it seems possible. Then comes 1260. The Mongols advance into Syria. They are moving toward Egypt, toward the heart of Muslim power. The Crusaders in Acre, the last major Crusader city, have to make a choice. Join the Mongols, or stay neutral. They choose neutral. They do not trust the Mongols. They fear what will happen if the Mongols win. So when the Egyptian Mamluks ask permission to march through Crusader territory to fight the Mongols, the Crusaders allow it. On September 3, 1260, at a place called Ain Jalut in modern-day Israel, the Mamluks meet the Mongols in battle. And for the first time, the Mongols are defeated. Decisively. The dream dies at Ain Jalut, but the attempts continue for decades. Ilkhan rulers like Abaka, Argun, Kazan, and Laitu keep sending embassies to Europe. They promise to give Jerusalem back to the Christians if Europe will just send armies to coordinate with them. Popes respond. Kings respond. But nothing happens. The problem is logistics. The distance is too great. Mongol armies and Crusader armies can never coordinate properly. They arrive months apart. When the Mongols invade Syria in 1281, no Crusader support comes. When they try again in 1299 and 1300 and 1312, the same thing happens. Promises but no action. Meanwhile, the Crusader kingdoms are collapsing. One by one, the great castles fall. The Mamluks systematically destroy every fortress so it can never be used again. In 1291, Acre falls. The last major Crusader city in the Holy Land is gone. The Crusaders retreat to Cyprus. They make one final attempt in 1300 to establish a base at Ruad, a small island off the coast of Syria. The plan is to use it as a staging ground for coordinated operations with the Mongols. But the Mongols never show up in time. The Muslims besiege the island. In 1302, Ruad falls. The last Crusader foothold in the Holy Land is lost forever. The alliance that could have changed everything never happened. Why did it fail? The reasons are complex. Distance and logistics make coordination almost impossible. Cultural misunderstandings ran deep. The Mongols saw relationships as either submission or war, with little room for equal allies. Europeans feared Mongol ambitions for world domination. If the Mongols defeated the Muslims with European help, what would stop them from turning on Europe next? Religious differences also mattered. The Mongols believed in Tengri, the eternal blue sky. Even the Christian Mongols were Nestorians, considered heretics by Rome. The theological gap was massive, but maybe the deepest reason is timing. By the time Europeans were ready to seriously consider alliance, the moment had passed. The Ilkhanate eventually converted to Islam in the early 1300s. The very ally the Crusaders had hoped for became Muslim. History is full of what-ifs. What if the alliance had worked? What if Crusader and Mongol armies had coordinated at Ain Jalut? What if Jerusalem had fallen to a Christian-Mongol coalition? The entire history of the Middle East, of Islam, of Europe would be different. But it did not happen. The Cross and the Khan never rode together. The letters and embassies and promises came to nothing, yet something did come from it. The friars who traveled east brought back knowledge. They mapped Asia. They described cultures and kingdoms Europe had never known. They opened the Silk Road not just for trade, but for ideas. In seeking allies, Europe discovered the wider world. The story of the Crusader-Mongol connection is not a story of success. It is a story of missed opportunity, of cultural collision, of the gap between hope and reality. Two great powers who shared an enemy but could never trust each other enough to become friends. For a brief moment, the world trembled at the possibility. Knights of the Cross and warriors of the steppe united against Islam, reshaping the medieval world. But the moment passed, and history moved on without them.